Prince William just silently took ownership of an enormous private estate that Camilla had treated like her personal domain for years, filling it with her family members and distributing comfortable positions to her sister. And the instant the documentation was finalized, he dismissed them all. No advance notice, no media announcement, just a standard financial report with an absent name and a statement so clear it practically reverberated through every royal residence in the nation. And what he's apparently planning next has reportedly sent Camilla into such a profound panic that insiders say she's genuinely frightened about her future living arrangements because the residences she inhabits daily, she doesn't legally own any portion of them. And the person who does just demonstrated he's not feeling nostalgic. Before we explore the consequences, if you enjoy royal investigations where we actually examine the evidence, quickly subscribe to Crown Watch. We analyze this material weekly. Now, let's begin. Everything started on September 8th, 2022. The instant Queen Elizabeth II drew her final breath at Balmoral Castle. In that single moment before the world had completely absorbed the news, a sequence of events triggered inside the British royal family that continues affecting relationships today. Charles became monarch. Obviously, that outcome everyone anticipated. But something else occurred simultaneously. Something that scarcely generated headlines, but carried implications that are absolutely enormous. William, who was 40 years old then, became the Duke of Cornwall. It was instantaneous by statute. The moment his father became sovereign, William became the exclusive owner of one of the oldest and most influential private estates on the planet. We're not discussing a symbolic title here. The Duchy of Cornwall is valued at approximately $1.2 billion. It encompasses 135,000 acres distributed across 23 counties throughout England and Wales. It includes nearly the complete Isles of Scilly, this stunning collection of islands off Cornwall's coast. It includes half of Dartmoor in Devon, historic farms, medieval castles, rental properties, vacation cottages, and decades of strategic financial planning. This estate was established back in 1337 by King Edward III exclusively for his son Edward the Black Prince, who became the inaugural Duke of Cornwall. The principle was straightforward and has remained unchanged. The estate belongs to the sovereign's eldest son and heir apparent. Nearly 7 centuries of tradition, and now it belonged to William. By 2025, William was generating approximately $30 million annually from this estate alone. He pays taxation on it voluntarily because legislation doesn't actually mandate him to. That's the degree of financial autonomy we're discussing. But here's where things get more troubling, and this is the element that most people completely overlooked. The Duchy of Cornwall was the identical estate that had been financing Charles's household for decades. While Charles held the Duke of Cornwall title, this estate produced his revenue. It supported his lifestyle, his residences, his initiatives. And during those identical years, Charles was conducting the relationship with Camilla that utterly devastated his marriage to Diana. The relationship that Diana characterized in her own statements as making her feel like there were 3 individuals in her marriage. What most people never witnessed was what it inflicted on her privately. Understanding her husband was selecting another woman repeatedly had completely destroyed her confidence. According to insiders, she would approach staff members, fear visible in her eyes, and quietly ask them, "Am I attractive enough?" When they responded yes, she would shake her head and whisper, "Don't deceive the princess." Like a young child restraining tears. A woman the entire world considered beautiful couldn't recognize it in herself anymore because the man she married had made her feel worthless. There were evenings when palace employees heard muted sobbing emanating from her quarters at 3 in the morning. Many nights she slept separately from Charles, isolated in one of the grandest structures in the world, and completely unnoticed by the public and completely broken inside. She became so insecure, so consumed by the sensation that she was losing her husband to another woman that people close to her characterized her as a person gradually vanishing from within. The relationship that William and Harry observed, destroying their mother from when they were young children. The lifestyle that this very estate supported now belonged to Diana's son. And there was one additional detail that almost nobody mentioned. The Duchy of Cornwall was designed specifically by King Edward so that heirs could never be financially manipulated or influenced by the reigning sovereign. William owning it meant he was financially autonomous from his own father, independent of everyone. And it had very contemporary implications that Camilla's family was about to experience. Because inside that estate, receiving a royal salary for nearly 2 decades, was a woman named Annabelle Elliot, Queen Camilla's younger sister. She had been employed back in 2005 to design the interiors of duchy properties throughout Cornwall, Wales, and the Isles of Scilly. She was employed without any competitive procedure. She secured the contract because her sister married the individual who owned the estate. That was the complete foundation of the agreement, and for 20 years it functioned perfectly until the day William became her employer. What occurred next transmitted a signal through Camilla's family that struck like thunder. Before we reach that, though, you need to comprehend precisely who Camilla was and what she had been accomplishing inside this family for the past 2 decades. Because William's actions didn't occur in isolation, they were the response to something. And that something is considerably darker than most people understand. Long before William possessed the authority to do anything regarding it, he was observing. And what he was observing would have broken a weaker person. It began with a promise. Before Charles married Camilla in April 2005, William and Harry approached their father privately. They made one quiet, particular request. Harry subsequently wrote about the discussion in his memoir, Spare. He wrote that they informed their father, "We support you. We accept Camilla. We will welcome her into the family. Just please don't marry her. Just be together," Harry wrote. The boys understood that a wedding would drag their mother's reputation back through every newspaper worldwide. It would compel the whole nation to compare Diana to the woman who had been her husband's mistress throughout their marriage. And neither of them desired that. Charles listened to both of his sons, and then he married her regardless. To control the public response, Buckingham Palace made a particular public statement. When Charles eventually became monarch, Camilla would be recognized as princess consort. She would never be queen. That was the arrangement. William accepted it. He attended the wedding, shook hands, smiled for the cameras, and carried the burden of what it all signified somewhere deep in private where nobody could observe it. In February 2022, something occurred that many people didn't completely comprehend at the time. Queen Elizabeth II released a statement marking her 70 years on the throne. It was intended to be a moment of contemplation, a moment of legacy, but concealed inside that statement was a decision that would alter everything. She said it was her sincere desire that Camilla be recognized as queen consort when King Charles became monarch. Initially, people assumed it was an act of acceptance, perhaps even forgiveness. But those close to the Queen revealed a very different account. This was not about affection or endorsement. This was fear. By this point, the Queen was dying. Her health was deteriorating rapidly, and she understood it. She could perceive what was approaching. The crown would soon transfer to Charles, and with it, a storm she would not be present to manage. One insider stated it directly. She wasn't blessing Camilla, she was containing something. In private, the Queen had used language that never reached the public. She had characterized Camilla as dangerous. She had observed for years. She had witnessed how far things could progress. And in those final years, she made a decision that felt less like approval and more like capitulation. She gave Camilla what she desired, not because she believed in her, but because she feared what might occur if she didn't. It was the action of a woman attempting to extinguish a fire she understood she would not survive long enough to combat. Then came May 2023, the coronation, and something else quietly transformed. The word consort began to vanish until suddenly it was eliminated. Camilla was no longer queen consort. She was simply queen, the precise title she had always desired, the one both princes had once made clear should never materialize. And yet there it was, official complete. One source later stated what many had suspected all along. She was never going to accept anything less. William had observed every version of the original promise get rewritten, and he said nothing. But the resentment was described by sources as profound and carefully concealed. One source stated it plainly. William is more diplomatic than Harry, so he has attempted to disguise his resentment. The way Camilla betrayed his mother has not been forgotten. And there was far more to resent than simply the title. Camilla didn't simply wait for her position to expand. She worked for it, and she had a very particular method of working. And when she wanted Charles to perceive William or Harry in a negative manner, she would approach him privately and whisper her interpretation of events into his ear. She influenced what Charles thought about his own son slowly and quietly from within. Royal biographer Christopher Anderson confirmed that Camilla was known to do precisely this, providing Charles her evaluations of William and Harry's deficiencies when nobody else was present. But that was only one aspect of her operation. The other aspect was the press. Camilla had cultivated relationships with key British journalists, and her team utilized those relationships as weapons. When she needed to appear favorable, stories materialized. When she needed someone else to appear unfavorable, those stories materialized too. Her team planted the false account that Meghan had made Kate cry in the days preceding the 2018 royal wedding. That story spread through the British press and caused genuine harm inside the family. Everyone in the palace understood it was false. Charles's team refused to correct it. William and Harry went directly to their father and informed him what his communications team was accomplishing. Charles yelled at them and told William he was being paranoid. Camilla had constructed a system where every door they attempted to open led back to her. William was not paranoid. He was observing clearly. He was storing every single thing away, and he was waiting for the day he possessed the authority to respond to it. The arrangement with Annabelle was constructed from the same blueprint. Camilla's sister was handed the profitable royal contract without competing for it, and she maintained it for 20 years. But what made it almost intolerable was the detail beneath the surface. Because long before the contract, there was something else, something hidden. Back when King Charles III was still married to Princess Diana, the relationship with Camilla had to be concealed. And there was one location where that occurred. A quiet country residence in Dorset, Annabelle's residence. It was in the village of Stirpane, isolated, private, safe from attention. That was where they met weekend after weekend. Annabelle provided them the space, the cover, the protection. And that's what makes what came next so difficult to disregard. Years later, after everything had emerged, after the damage was complete, after Diana was gone, Annabelle was now being compensated because of the employment Camilla gave her. Compensated through the estate connected to Diana's legacy. Compensated from the estate associated with William. When William finally possessed the authority to act, the question was never whether he would. The question was only how. The moment William became Duke of Cornwall, he understood precisely what he was going to do about Annabelle Elliot. He would dismiss her. He didn't call a meeting. He didn't send a letter. He didn't make a single public declaration. He simply waited for the Duchy of Cornwall to publish its routine annual financial accounts. It is a document that almost nobody outside royal financial circles ever examines. A dry technical record of revenue, expenditures, and staffing throughout the estate. But this time, something was different. Annabelle Elliot's name was gone. And 20 years of royal employment concluded without a single public statement. To comprehend how much that removal actually signified, you need to comprehend how much Annabelle had constructed during those 2 decades. And then you will comprehend precisely how much William just removed. Annabelle was genuinely talented and widely respected. In 2014, she was named the 5th most influential female interior designer in the United Kingdom. She had designed the interiors of 12 holiday cottages on the Isles of Scilly. She had worked on properties at Restormel Castle. She had transformed the Winwermott estate in Wales. She had taken a deteriorated barn at Dumfries House in Ayr, Scotland, and converted it into a luxurious guest house that was utilized for weddings and private functions. For nearly 20 years, her work was integrated through some of the most beautiful properties in the entire royal collection. None of that protected her. Royal expert Emmy Griffiths explained the situation with careful language, the kind of language people utilize when they are attempting not to say something too directly. She said that since Prince William had assumed control as Duke of Cornwall, he had taken Annabelle off the payroll and that this had caused a few ripples in a few headlines. The official statement from sources was equally careful. They said the decision was no reflection on her work. It was not about her work. Everyone understood that a separate royal source was considerably less careful. This source said William's move sent a message and that he wanted to eliminate the royal hangers-on and reduce the extravagant spending his father had accumulated during his time managing the duchy. Eliminate the royal hangers-on. That is the phrase that matters. That is what William thought of the arrangement that his father had established for his wife's family. At the same time as Annabelle disappeared from the payroll, William was filling the duchy with people he had selected himself. He brought in Harry Aubrey Fletcher and William Van Cutsem, both of whom were his personal friends and godparents to his children, Prince George and Princess Charlotte. The message didn't need any explanation. Out went Camilla's family. In came William's people. Every position Charles had filled with someone from his world was now being reviewed. Every arrangement constructed around Camilla's comfort was being examined. On the surface, the financial cost was modest. Annabelle had been paid anywhere between approximately £20,000 and £82,000 per year. Against a $1.2 billion estate, those numbers are almost nothing. But the symbolism was enormous, and everyone inside the royal family perceived it. It informed Camilla that her family's access to the crown was not permanent. It informed the royal household that the transition from Charles's era to William's had already quietly commenced. And this was not the only action William initiated. Every year at Christmas, the royal family gathers at Sandringham. It is one of the most important family traditions in the monarchy. Sandringham is where generations of royals have spent the holiday together. William will one day inherit it. Camilla decided to invite her son, Tom Parker Bowles, her child from her first marriage, to the family Christmas there. Reports emerged that a furious William had made his position clear he would not attend the main Christmas lunch if Tom was present. Camilla invited Tom regardless. Tom confirmed to the Telegraph that his mother had personally requested him to come, telling him she had not had Christmas with him in a long time. Tom came. William did not attend the main gathering at the big house. He stayed with Kate and their children at Anmer Hall, their residence on the Sandringham estate, and spent Christmas there instead. Camilla had just forced the future monarch of England out of his own family Christmas at an estate he will one day own because she invited her son and refused to reconsider. That's not a minor family disagreement. That's a power struggle occurring over seating arrangements and turkey lunch. Then in September 2025, something occurred publicly that made the tension impossible to disregard. During Donald Trump's state visit to Windsor Castle, Kate fell into easy and natural conversation with Melania Trump. The two women connected warmly. Then from the side, Camilla stepped in. What occurred next lasted only a second, but it transformed the entire tone of the moment. Camilla raised her hand and made a short, firm motion toward Kate. It was a signal and it said, "Move, step aside, leave." It wasn't verbal, but it was unmistakable. A body language expert, Judy James, later characterized it bluntly. It looked like she was pulling rank, almost shooing her away. The clip spread everywhere. Millions watched it, slowed it down, replayed it, because what it showed was uncomfortable. The Queen appeared to be dismissing the future Queen in public before world leaders. Behind the scenes, the reaction was immediate. Prince William had spent years maintaining things calm, but this was different. One source said it affected him deeply. That wasn't just awkward. That crossed the line because this wasn't a private disagreement anymore. It was a public message, and it had just been transmitted to the entire world. By that point, something even more disturbing was already occurring behind closed doors. King Charles III, still battling cancer, had started having quiet conversations with his son about what would happen after he was gone. One insider characterized the tone as urgent and personal. "Leave Camilla alone." That was the message from Charles to his son. Protect her. Don't turn against her. Don't push her out. It was a dying monarch spending what could be his final years attempting to secure his wife's future by appealing directly to the one person who could remove it. That single detail reveals more about where this is heading than anything else, because William's answer was not given in statements. It was given in a Christmas he didn't attend. It was given in the friends he employed to replace the woman his father's wife had hired. But the dismissal of Annabelle Elliot and the Christmas standoff were only what people could observe. The move that Camilla understood at the deepest level, the one that would define the rest of her life, had nothing to do with a payroll and everything to do with four walls and a roof. Because William hadn't just inherited an estate, he had inherited the homes she called her own. And the day was approaching when she would have to ask him whether she could remain. Right now, Queen Camilla's life appears completely secure. She moves between Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, Sandringham, and Balmoral. She has official royal responsibilities. She has the complete support and protection of her husband, the monarch. She holds the title Her Majesty the Queen. She is patron or president of more than 90 charities. From the outside, her position appears solid and permanent, but every single thing she possesses is connected to one man, and that man has cancer. Here is something that most people don't completely comprehend, and it is the most important thing in this entire account. Sandringham House in Norfolk and Balmoral Castle in Scotland are not owned by the British government. They are not crown properties managed by an institution. They are privately owned the same way a family residence is privately owned. And Queen Elizabeth II inherited both of them from her father, King George VI. When Elizabeth died in September 2022, they transferred directly to Charles. When Charles dies, they transfer directly to William. Balmoral is valued at approximately $140 million. Sandringham is valued at approximately $65 million. Together, that is over $200 million in private property that Camilla currently walks through, sleeps in, and calls home. None of it belongs to her. Not in any legal sense, not in any document that exists anywhere. One day these residences will belong to William, the man who just removed her sister from his payroll without a single public statement. Balmoral, in particular, carries a burden that extends far beyond its financial value. William was 15 years old and staying at Balmoral with his brother Harry in August 1997 when their father came to their rooms before dawn to inform them their mother was dead. Diana had been killed in a car accident in Paris. William and Harry walked those grounds that morning, completely devastated. Two boys attempting to survive something no child should ever have to endure. And the detail that sits underneath all of this, like a stone, is that when Charles received the news from Paris, the first person he called was not the Queen, who was also at Balmoral. The first person he called was Camilla. She reassured him Diana would be fine. Then he called back with the news that she was gone. Camilla was the first to know. She was there for Charles's grief before his own sons were even awake. Camilla now walks those same grounds as Queen. William will own them. One day when Charles dies, the legal transfer is instant and automatic, precisely as it was in 2022 when William became Duke of Cornwall. William becomes monarch. The second his father is gone, Kate becomes queen, and Camilla loses the title the Queen entirely. It transfers to Kate. Camilla would most likely become Queen Dowager, which means the widow of a monarch. It is not a shameful designation, but it is a step back that the entire world will notice. Here is the part that makes it genuinely frightening for Camilla. Her title is not protected by birth. She is royal by marriage only. That means it will be entirely up to William to decide what she is called after Charles is gone. Charles stripped Diana of her title, her Royal Highness, after their divorce. William was there for that. He observed it happen to his mother. He understands precisely how the mechanism functions. And now he could seek revenge for his mother. He could reclaim everything Camilla took from his mother. Sandringham and Balmoral will belong to William. Whether Camilla can continue residing in those residences will depend entirely on what William decides. There is no legal protection that guarantees her access. She will be a guest if he extends that courtesy. And here is the detail that makes her situation almost impossible to escape. Camilla had one piece of property in her life that was completely and only hers. It was called Ray Mill House, a private residence in Wiltshire that she had owned before she ever married Charles. She used to discuss it with real affection. She called the garden there the best therapy in the world. It was her retreat, her private ground, the one place where she could close the door and simply be herself away from the burden of royal life. But then she sold it. She sold the only residence that was truly hers. The reasons given were that she wanted to commit fully to her royal life and her role beside Charles. But the consequence of that decision is devastating and irreversible. When Charles dies, Camilla will have no private property of her own anywhere. She will live wherever William decides she should live. The woman who spent 20 years engineering her way to the top of the most powerful family in Britain, who managed the press, who whispered in Charles's ear, who planted stories, who pushed out the future monarch from Christmas, who dismissed the future queen with a gesture of her hand before the entire world, will now entirely depend on the goodwill of the man she helped push out of his own family residence. She constructed the trap herself. She walked into it with her eyes